Hi class, I'm just going to give you a quick tour of my house here so I can talk to you about gardening. Okay, so welcome to my backyard here. So as you can see, I've got neighbors all around, but we're still able to do some stuff. However, it's still buried under snow. So the area right behind those clump of trees is where we have our garden, and there's a little bit in front of those trees too as well. Next to the shed we also have a bunch of rhubarb plants that we grow. So we don't have a large area, but we do grow back here things like beans and carrots and potatoes, and we've done broccoli and what else? Eggplants. There's not a lot of sun once the trees get leaves back here, so we're kind of limited in what we can do here, and that's why at the side of the house, and I'll show you that in a second, we do container pot gardening. So right back here is the in-ground garden, and on the side of our house where there's tons of sun, we use container pots. Okay, just walking back here. So again, all our garden is buried under this big huge snow pile. I will show you our compost piles. So we just moved to this house about a year ago, so we're still working on upgrading things. We're definitely going to build 2 more composters this year, but this is how we fertilize our soil. Okay, so it's a huge heaping pile because everything hasn't really gone down since the winter is here, but once spring hits in full force in Wawa, this will go down pretty quick, and so this one is full too as well. And at the bottom, the front here opens as well, so you can get at the bottom of the compost, and that's going to be used to help fertilize our soil for this year. So walking to the front of our house, this is where we get all the sun. And so while we haven't decided to commit to putting a garden in our front yard, what we do is we usually have about 15 or so container pots that we put right along here that receive a lot of sun. So we'll do, oh, that's my dog, he wants to say hi. Yeah, we do about 10 or so plants of tomatoes, and then we'll do some eggplants or sometimes some strawberries in container pots, a lot of hot peppers too as well. And at the side of the house here, this is where we get all our water. So it's a homemade rain barrel. It just attaches to the spout, so all the runoff from the roof goes in here, and it's upside down right here right now just for storage during the winter, but flip it over just like a tap. We attach a hose to it too as well, and that's where we get all our water. Okay, so now I'm just going to take the time to answer some of the questions that you guys had about gardening. So Riley wanted to know, what time of year would you recommend starting a garden in Northern Ontario? And that's a good question. So there's 2 different approaches to this. You can start plants indoors, usually around, I would say, March, and then you're going to start to sprout them and that sort of stuff, so that by the time the last chance of any sort of frost occurring leaves, you can plant it in the ground, okay? Because again, we have a short growing season in Northern Ontario, so you do want to give your plants a head start, so starting them indoors is a good idea. Or the other option too is to actually buy plants from greenhouses and that, and so they've already got that head start, put them into the ground again once the chance of frost is gone, and then you're good to go. Another question Riley had is, what type of soil would you recommend for beginners to use? It doesn't matter if you're a beginner or an expert gardener, you need a soil that's going to be able to give the nutrients that the plants need. So use any type of soil based on your plant's needs. So again, you have to do a little bit of research when you decide to grow a garden into what you want to grow and those specific requirements of that plant. Okay, and it's not tough. I mean, you can buy pre-bagged stuff from stores like Canadian Tire, or you can go out and sort of make your own with use of like compost, manure, or you maybe just have great topsoil in the area that you're starting out with, which is great. But if you have a garden over repeated years, you're going to want to sort of enrich that soil. Another question is, would you recommend using a window box or container pots in the winter seasons? So window box are generally just on the outside of houses, so that's going to be too cold. As far as growing stuff indoors in the winter year-round, it's a great idea too. It depends on the amount of space that you have. I know some people that have basically a whole room in their basement where they grow stuff, legal plants, like herbs and spices, but you can also grow like tomatoes indoors, lettuce, spinach, all that sort of stuff, okay? Another easy, simple thing to get involved in is growing your own herb garden. So things like basil grow really well, or thyme or rosemary, and you can grow that year-round just in a little small container at any window that gets enough sunlight. So Carissa wants to know, how do you prevent pests without pesticides? And so I do organic gardening, so I don't use any sort of chemical fertilizers or even pesticides and all that sort of stuff. And so what I do, it's called companion planting. So different sort of plants attract different bugs, and different plants repel bugs too as well. So you can go online and just do a little bit of research, and you'll learn what to plant near each other, so that if one plant attracts a bug, the other plant that's right next to it is going to repel it. So then those sort of species do stay away. One of the good things about living in Northern Ontario is we don't have a lot of pest problems too as well. So that's kind of beneficial. So again, companion planting is one way to do that. Another way too, sometimes slugs can be an issue in the north. So just having a bunch of eggshells that sort of line around the garden will help prevent slugs from getting into the garden, because they're not going to cross anything that's going to be crunchy and tough on their skin. And she also asked, can you have a garden inside of your home rather than a greenhouse? Absolutely, and that's what I talked about extending the growing season of your garden. Just starting plants indoors early on to get that sprout. Okay. Greenhouses are a great option too as well. There's lots of people that have greenhouses here in Wawa, because again, it extends your growing season. And even though with a shorter growing season, even on our warmer summer days, sometimes they're not even all that warm, and some plants again require a lot of heat to get a good crop yield. So greenhouses can aid in that. Tiffany wants to know, is it safe to use a growth enhancer, or should you just let the plant grow naturally? And that's all about personal choice. So again, if you're going to go the organic gardening route, things like compost, manure, bone meal, those are great alternatives to any sort of synthetic chemical. What else we got here? Excuse me. Tiffany also wants to know, what are some good vegetables or fruits for beginner gardens to grow? Lots of things are easy. So, I mean, you can start with things like carrots grow really well. We've had great success with peas. Sometimes broccoli works, sometimes it doesn't. It really depends on where you're going to be growing it and the conditions that you have to grow it in. So it's not so much like some vegetables are easier than others. It's just, again, the growing conditions that you have. Caitlin wants to know, how much sunlight does crops need to grow? So again, totally depends on your plant species. Some can go with partial shade, very little sunlight. Some need that full sunlight in order for the crops to ripen and that sort of stuff. And Caitlin also wants to know, do I really need to compost, or can I just leave the soil as is? So depending on what you're starting out with, you may be able to get 1 or 2 seasons without adding any sort of nutrients to the soil, but after that you're going to have to enrich it somehow. So compost, manure, or fertilizer, your choice. Mac wants to know, should soil be bought, or is it fine to use soil from your yard? What would the best outdoor location be to get it from? So again, it all depends on what you're starting out with. Maybe your soil is good for a couple years. Maybe you're going to need to get some soil. You can buy bags of soil from different stores, but you can also buy soil from farms. You can buy soil from soil companies that just have basically heaps of soil that they load up into the back of pickup trucks and can deliver to you. And that's great because the soil is generally local soil, so you're not paying a lot of shipping costs for transporting soil, I don't know, from across countries and stuff like that, so you're reducing pollution there too. And there's lots of places to get it. So I know most of this class is from Sault Ste. Marie, so I'm horrible with street names in the Sioux, but it's down by that place that has the million baseball diamonds. I think it's Black Dirt Road, actually. There's a place right there that sells soil and compost and manure. You can get it right there locally, just by the truckload. You can go bring your own vehicle. Sometimes they'll deliver it at all different quantities too as well, and it's generally cheaper than buying bags and bags of soil, so that's a good option. Mac also wants to know, is there a way to grow outdoors in the winter without a greenhouse? We kind of covered that with starting things indoors, or just buying plants to start with too as well. What is the easiest vegetable to grow indoors? I would recommend something like a herb garden. So again, the basils, the rosemarys, that sort of stuff. Chives work really well indoors. Or something that has a really short growing season. So things like lettuce and spinach are really good too as well. Let's see, Michael wants to know, do you use automatic irrigation in your gardens, or do you prefer to water by hand? So with such a small garden, absolutely everything is by hand. And by having the rain barrel, it eliminates using tap water that has things like chlorine and stuff, which plants aren't going to like too much. And also it doesn't have to go through the water treatment processing plant, which saves a lot of energy and water that way too as well. So we're just using rainwater to water the garden with at our house. What else? What crops can be grown in Canada and can be used most once harvested? It's all personal preference. So what do you like to eat? We hate onions at this house. I mean, we're never going to grow onions, but we love peas. So we have most of our garden devoted to snap peas, which are delicious. So again, it's all personal preference with that. And I think I've pretty much covered most people's questions. So some of them were kind of doubled up. If you guys have any other questions too as well, email it to me and I'll get back to you. Okay.